Good morning. Um, Plato's Gorgias, day 4. I think, Gorgias, that, like myself, you have had much experience in discussions and must have observed that speakers can seldom define the topic of debate, and after mutual instruction and enlightenment bring the meeting to a close. But if they are in dispute and one insists that the other's statements are incorrect or obscure, they grow angry and imagine their opponents speak with malice toward them, being more anxious for verbal victory than to investigate the subject under discussion. This is perfect. Not the courtroom of victory seeking, but the courtyard of truth seeking. And finally, some of them part in the most disgraceful fashion, after uttering and listening to such abusive language that their audience are disgusted with themselves for having deigned to give ear to such fellows. Oh yeah, I had that. There was one conversation that Jordan Peterson had with, the man's name, Stephen Fry, and two other people. On freedom of speech or something. I'm not sure. It was horrible to watch. It was horrible. It was like, dude, like you attacking his person, which is really, even not done in high school. What do you call it again? Debate. It's like, no. You don't even do that in high school. You're supposed to be, I think I was a preacher. Well, anyway. Now, why do I say this? Because it seems to me what you are now saying is not quite consistent or in tune with what you said at first about rhetoric. Okay, so he just said, like, I teach rhetoric for... Rhetoric itself is not bad, but people can use it for bad purposes. That's what Socrates is referring to. But I am afraid to cross-examine you, for fear you might think my pertinency is directed against you and not to the clarification of the matter in question. Now, if you are the same kind of man as I am, I should be glad to question you. If not, I will let you alone. And what kind of man am I? One of those who would gladly be refuted if anything I say is not true, and would gladly refute another who says that it is not true, but would be no less happy who says what is not true, but would be no less happy to be refuted myself than to refute. For I consider that a greater benefit, inasmuch as it is a greater boon to be delivered from the worst of evils oneself, than to deliver another. For I believe there is no worse evil for man than a false opinion about the subject of our present discussion. If you then are the same kind of man as I am, let us continue, but if you feel that we should drop the matter, then let us say goodbye to the argument and dismiss it. So do you want to spar with me or not? And I believe that there is no worse evil for man than a false opinion about the subject of our present discussion. What exactly is the subject of the present discussion? I mean, on the surface it looks like it's rhetoric and the art of rhetoric. But it must be deeper, right? Is it this whole thing about bullshit against truth, the love of truth against the love of victory, to live a true life, the honest search for the real? Is that what the true subject of their present discussion is? I don't know. We'll see. Gorgias responds, "No, I claim to be myself, the type of man you indicate, but perhaps we ought to have been thinking of our audience. For quite a time ago, before your arrival, I gave a long display to the company present, and now perhaps, if we continue our debate, it will be a prolonged affair. So we should consider the convenience of our audience, in case we are detaining here some who are anxious to be doing something else." And a different party speaks, Sairophon. "You can hear for yourself, Gorgias and Socrates, the protest of the company, who are eager to hear whatever you have to say. As for me, heaven forbid I should have any engagement so pressing as to desert a conversation of such a character, and between such interlocutors, for however profitable an occupation." I love it. It feels like this is indeed a preview of this corner of the internet. How people would just like sit for hours looking at people discussing important matters. I love it. Callicus, another third party. "Indeed, Cypheron, I too have listened to many a debate, but I think I have never enjoyed one so much as this. I shall be delighted, in fact, if you are ready to talk all day long." Remember, the two interlocutors is Socrates, who needs no introduction, as we can say, and Gorgias, an expert in the art of rhetoric. So I can imagine that it's quite something to experience. Socrates speaks, "Well, I have no I have no objection to offer if Gorgias is willing." "After all this, Socrates," Gorgias says, "it would be disgraceful of me to refuse, when I personally volunteer to meet any question that might be put. But if those present agree, carry on the conversation and ask what you will." Socrates. Look at the skill that Socrates throughout the dialogue up to here has shown, like in conversation. Like Gorgias at first were like reluctant to even take part. He was like, let my disciple speak on my behalf. And now he's like totally committed. Socrates. "Then listen, Gorgias, to what surprises me in your statement. For perhaps you were right and I misunderstood you. You claim you can make a rhetorician of any man who wishes to learn from you. Yes, with the result that he would be convincing about any subject before a crowd, not through instruction, but by persuasion. Certainly. Well, you said just now that a rhetorician will be more persuasive than a doctor regarding health. Yes, I said so, before a crowd. So I stand by that. And before a crowd means among the ignorant. For surely among those who know, he will not be more convincing than the doctor. Good one. That is quite true. Then if he is more persuasive than the doctor, he is more persuasive than the man who knows. Certainly, though not himself a doctor. Yes. And who is not a doctor is surely ignorant of what a doctor knows. Obviously. Therefore, when the rhetorician is more convincing than the doctor, the ignorant is more convincing among the ignorant than the expert. Is that our conclusion, or is something else? Oh, wow, powerful. The ignorant is more convincing amongst the ignorant than the expert. You can only bullshit ignorant people. That is a conclusion in this instance. We're all ignorant, of course, in many, many things. Is not the position of the rhetorician and rhetoric the same with respect to the other arts also? It has no need to know the truth about things, but merely to discover a technique of persuasion. I'm sorry, I just have to say, I'm thinking now. Now this is my favorite of the dialogues. I told you so. Whatever I'm reading, I'm like, ooh, this is my favorite. Is not the position of the rhetorician and of rhetoric the same with respect to the other arts also? It has no need to know the truth about things, but merely to discover a technique of persuasion, so as to appear among the ignorant to have more knowledge than the expert. Gorgias, but is not this a great comfort, Socrates, to be able, without learning any other art, but this one, to prove in no way inferior to the specialist? To prove in no way inferior to the specialist. My opinion is just as valuable as theirs. Whether or not the rhetorician is inferior to other craftsmen for this reason, we will consider later, if the question should prove relevant. But now let us first investigate whether the relation of the rhetorician to right and wrong, the noble and the base, the just and the unjust, is the same as it is to health, and the objects of the other arts, whether he does not know what is right or wrong, noble or base, just or unjust, but has contrived a technique of persuasion in these matters, so that, though ignorant, he appears among the ignorant to know better than the expert. Or must your prospective pupil in rhetoric have such knowledge and bring it with him when he comes to you? And if he is ignorant, will you, his teacher of rhetoric, teach your pupil none of these things? For that is not your concern, but make him appear before the crowd to have such knowledge, when he has it not, and appear to be a good man, when he is not. Or will you be, and that's important, appear to be a good man when he is not? Virtue signaling. This is so relevant. I can see why Plato is making a comeback. Or will you be utterly unable to teach him rhetoric if he does not beforehand know the truth about these matters? How do we stand here, Gorgias? In heaven's name, reveal, as you promised just now, the true power of rhetoric. And I'm almost afraid to read further, because the power of rhetoric, I suspect, is overwhelming. Well, Socrates, Gorgias says, I suppose that if he does not possess this knowledge, he can learn these things also from me. Socrates, stop one moment. What you say is right. If you make a rhetorician of any man, he must already have knowledge of right and wrong, either by previous acquaintance or by learning it from you. Certainly. Oh, I'm a little bit lost now. Anyway, certainly, so Gorgias says. Socrates, now, is not the man who has learned the art of carpentry a carpenter? Yes. And he who has learned the art of music a musician? Yes. And he who has learned medicine a physician? And so too, on the same principle, the man who has learned anything becomes in each case such as his knowledge makes him? Certainly. Then according to this principle, he who has learned justice is just? Most assuredly. And the just man, I suppose, does just acts? Yes. Now the rhetorician, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, must necessarily be just, and the man must wish to do just action. Evidently, I don't see that leap. Then the just man will never wish to do injustice, necessarily. And our argument demands that the rhetorician be just. Yes. I don't see why it should be a problem if the rhetorician is just. Then the rhetorician will never wish to do wrong. Evidently not. Now, do you remember saying a short while ago that we should not blame our trainers or expel them from our cities if a boxer practices his art in a wrongful manner and does injury? And so too, if a rhetorician makes wrongful use of his rhetoric, we should not censure or banish his instructor, but rather the guilty man and who wrongly employs rhetoric. Was this said or not? It was said on day 3. But now it is clear that the same rhetorician would never do wrong, is it not? It is clear. I assume he means if... I need to stop. If Gorgias, the instructor, also teaches him what he... I suppose that if he does not possess this knowledge, he can learn these things from me. That is what Gorgias said. So if you also teach him true knowledge of what he is speaking about. I think I should stop there. Enjoy your day.